So this is some commentary on thoughts on a challenge video that's been making the rounds. It was originally posted on BJJ Eastern Europe and on YouTube. It's discussions on Reddit, etc., and various people are weighing in with their opinions. So why not me? You know, I'm coming at this as a longtime jiu-jitsu practitioner and as a school owner in this case. Now, the video itself, you can find it. I'll post up a link below if you haven't seen it before. It's about 5 minutes. It's kind of out of context. You only kind of see the middle of the match and the aftermath and the person being escorted out. Now, quite frankly, are there points that I think that went a little bit too far? Yeah, it wasn't a good look. But at the end of the day, the person, both people, walked out of there. They kind of shook hands, or at least the challenger walked out of the dojo. And I would probably check for concussion after those things, but he doesn't seem a whole lot worse for wear in this case, all things considering. And without the context of what happened before and what the circumstances were, it's hard to make much more of a comment than that. Based on what I've seen, doesn't look as horrible as a lot of people make it out to be, in my opinion. I've seen way worse stuff happen on World Star the few times I've been unfortunate enough to stumble upon that. I will say, though, that as a school owner, I don't think it's a smart idea to be posting this type of stuff on the internet. I think it's pretty much you're in a no-win situation at this point when you put something up like that. Maybe a better conversation other than the video right now, because these things happen from time to time and they'll continue to happen in the future, is what would you do if somebody came into your school and challenged you? Now, number one, I'm going to tell you, always be prepared for that possibility. For whatever reason, people think it's cool to walk into a dojo, challenge somebody, the kind of cut to the front of the line, so to speak, right there. Half Gracie always made a really big point. When I first got the key to the academy, not as an instructor, I got the key to the academy, the old Mountain View Academy, just because I wanted more mat time and training and stuff like that. And he let a few of the students have that. But he always gave this speech that, with that key comes responsibility. And at some point, somebody might come in and you might have to fight to defend the dojo, or you might have to be prepared for that. Didn't necessarily say you had to fight to no, actually, Hal actually did say you might have to fight to defend the dojo right there. But he was more clear on the fact that people might come in with bad intentions. And if you're the person that's responsible at this point, if you have the key, for example, if you're the one person that's there, it's your responsibility to go ahead and handle that one way or the other. And as you're a school owner, the buck stops here. I found that out over the years that, ultimately, I have a lot of ways of dealing with situations, but it's ultimately my responsibility to handle those types of situations. But rule number one is always be prepared for that eventuality. I'll actually say that, on average, I've had some kind of challenge or somebody come in with bad intentions. I've said over my entire career, maybe every 6 months or so that happens. But very, very, very rarely does it actually escalate into any kind of match or confrontation or anything physical. Now, the next thing I would say is realize that challenge matches are a matter of absolute last resort as a school owner. You have nothing to gain by participating in something like this. You have everything to lose. You're the one that's established. You have your school, your business, your students, your livelihood. This is just some rando walking in off the street wanting to prove something like that. The days of the challenge matches and people trying to prove that my style is the best, that's over. That person's living in a fantasy land and you don't want to stoop to that level. I'm not saying that these things don't happen and won't happen, and sometimes they're not a necessity, but it's a matter of absolute last resort. I'm also going to say that 99.9% of people that walk into a dojo, offer a challenge like that, or demand a challenge like that, are mentally unstable. No professional fighter, no true martial artist would ever walk into a dojo like that randomly and issue a challenge like that or make some kind of demand. They're if not mental issues, they're clearly delusional about what their actual abilities are. And you have to treat them as such as a crazy person on that. Both in terms of how you handle them, how you talk and deal with them, and what the potential aftermath of dealing with a crazy person is. The next thing, I'm going to evaluate you pretty carefully when you come in. Now, having said that most people have some kind of mental issue, I might actually invite you to the class. Now, in all my years of having somebody come in for a challenge match or make some kind of threat or something like that, they've never come in at the start of a class. They've always come in at the end of the class when everybody's spent or some kind of odd hour or something like that. So oftentimes I say like, yeah, that's not the way we do things. Why don't you come back in at the regular time, participate in class, and see how it goes. Now, disclaimer, I would never invite you in if I thought you were going to pose any kind of danger to any of my students. I do not want you mixing up. I do not want a crazy person mixing up. But sometimes there's an opportunity if somebody's misguided about how to go ahead and approaching a gym. There's an opportunity to go ahead and make an invite out there. Like, it's an opportunity to offer kindness first in a way and integrate them into a group. Again, sometimes these guys are lost souls. Again, I would never invite you into my circle, essentially. My home is what I really think of my dojo. If I thought you were some kind of safety risk to any of my students. Like, it's not worth upsetting the group dynamic that I have on that. And quite frankly, because these guys never come in at the right time anyways, it's not like they researched, saw my hours on the internet, and came in for my fundamentals class right there. 9 times out of 10 plus, I'm going to say, like, telling somebody to come back in the next day and participate in the class means that they're never going to see them again. Like, oftentimes these are spot decisions right there. And, sometimes other than telling them the fact that, okay, like, I don't want to have this match right there, I'll set up a condition for you to come into the class or participate on that I know that you're not going to be able to handle right there. Be it like, the entry fee. And like, a lot of these guys are, again, have nothing to lose. They can't afford the entry fee on that. And I'm not going to negotiate that with you. In similar fashion, I had a friend, the one who was challenged to a fight, says like, well, you know what? Go to the ATM, pull out $1,000 because I'm a professional and I don't fight for free. And this is in regards to a bar fight situation, but I thought it was a great line. It diffused it pretty quickly. It let the person know it's like, ooh, you're dealing with somebody that means business. But again, you set up a condition that seemingly reasonable, but they're never going to be able to hit that right there. Quite frankly, if I set up a cost of $10 to fight me, I would say the majority of folks that came in for an actual challenge match like that wouldn't have been able to afford that one right there. But again, use your judgment, use your smarts about this. I would way rather use my mouth and my mind to get out of these types of situations or diffuse these types of situations than ever getting into my hands and my fists in this. Another concept that I have, especially when it comes to like challenges and fights and stuff like that, I'm a big believer in peace without victory. Like, I would rather have peace than victory most of the time. The next thing I would tell somebody that came in for a challenge match is like, well, the challenge match really doesn't happen anymore. There are a lot of legitimate avenues and venues for you to go ahead and test yourself if that's what you want to do. There's tournaments, there's amateur and professional MMA. There's not a shortcut on this one right here. You can go ahead and you can test your skills on that, and I'm sure there are plenty of promoters, if you wanted to get into the cage, would accept you at whatever value that you have right there. The commission might have something else to say about that, but I can guarantee you, if you really wanted to get into the fight and test yourself, go ahead and test yourself that way. I have zero issue with that. It doesn't involve me, and then there's kind of a sanctioning body behind this. But coming in, and I'll tell them this, coming in and issuing a challenge or doing a spot one is not the way of the warrior or the martial arts. It's quite frankly the way of the coward. If you want to do this, do it the right way. You're not handling this in the right way. And again, use the language that's appropriate for you to the situation, to who you're dealing with right now. Again, as the school owner, you're quite frankly the one that has something to lose on this case. So what if you go ahead and win the match and beat them up? Like, they can come back in off hours and throw a brick through your window. Oftentimes, these types of things aren't worth it to you. That being said, if it comes down to the point where I cannot talk you out of the challenge match and it comes upon me to do this, again, it is a matter of absolute last resort, then I don't treat this as a sporting contest at this point. I treat this as a self-defense situation. I'm defending myself, I'm defending my property, I'm defending my students possibly, but this is a self-defense situation. This is not a challenge match, okay? This is not a martial arts contest. And I will treat this situation, I will react accordingly based on what that is. And having stated before my goals, my goal is my personal safety, the safety of my school and my property, the safety of my students, not necessarily in that order. My second priority would make sure that there is no repeat, no second confrontation, no request for a rematch. And as such, if we're going to go through this, I'm going to make that experience as unpleasant as possible for you. Now, that can take a number of different interpretations depending on who you're dealing with, what your mentality is, what the situation recalls. I will say from experience that simply submitting somebody really quickly or catching them in a submission hold quite often doesn't work on these folks right there. I'm loath to break a limb just because of the liability issues on that. Putting somebody to sleep may or may not be the best option in this case. It's not always 100% safe, so we always have to remember that. But again, we're treating this as a self-defense situation. Oftentimes I would use position and pressure to make this experience as unpleasant for you as possible right there. And I'm certainly capable of doing that. But again, I do not want a repeat of this action. I do not want a second challenge match. I do not want you to ever think of coming back around initiating this challenge to me or for anybody else. And in the past, I have made the mistake of being a little bit too soft on somebody, only to have them come around for a period of time and continually ask for things off of me. Like, if we got to that challenge match right there, that is the end of the encounter. That is the end of my dealings with you pretty much forever. Having said all of this, when the situation is over, it's over, okay? I do not need anybody coming back at me for revenge, and there's a personal code of ethic that I would say I have that, you know, martial arts to me is about defending and protecting the weak. And not necessarily going after the vulnerable. There's no honor of going after anybody when my goal is accomplished right there. And again, my goal isn't victory at this point because this is a self-defense situation. This is not a victory situation. Okay, my victory is keeping myself safe. My victory is keeping my school and my students safe. My victory is making sure that this situation doesn't happen again. And I'll do what I have to do to make sure that all those things happen. But once I've made sure that that mission is accomplished, it's done, it's over, I'll withdraw. I also have to say that as a martial artist, you know, what we preach, what we sell, what we espouse is control. So even if the situation gets a little bit out of hand or gets a little bit out of our control, or if it goes beyond the scope of what we expected at this point, you know, what values that opponent has is somewhat irrelevant to the fact that I have to maintain control of this the entire time. Like, our whole training is to go ahead and maintain that control, control the situation, control ourselves the entire time right there. So I would say that like it escalated and I lost a little bit right there. That's not really an excuse for us as martial artists. Again, we've been preparing for these types of situations our whole lives. And if we can't establish that type of control the whole way through, well, we're not practicing what we preach at this point right there. We're not sending out a great message. And that ability to have control throughout the whole situation, that we're going to go ahead and that, you know, we have great power, and with great power comes great responsibility. I love quoting that from Spider-Man right there, but it's true. You know, I'd be hypocritical to criticize anybody else on that if I didn't try to maintain that myself. And I'm not saying we're not human. You know, I certainly have my good days and bad days on this, but this is a professional situation. We're professionals at this right now. We're not allowed to have the bad day there. The final thing I would say about this is don't bother filming it. You know, there's no good publicity that's going to come out of this. There's no win situation on this. Like, you know, even if you're the most benign reaction off of this, like, somebody's going to come off and like, bah, 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 and hate on you for this. And if you're going to film it, for the love of God, don't put it on the internet. You know, this isn't necessarily how we want to be seen on this. And I'm speaking specifically to these challenge matches right there. That, you know, there was a loss of control in the fact that we ever let it get to that spot right there. And quite frankly, you're going to lose in the court of public opinion. And you might need that video in an actual court if it comes down to this. We're a very litigious society at this point. At any rate, just some of my thoughts on challenge matches right there. Be safe. Happy training. See you on the mat soon.